And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here, and today we're going to take a look at Dungeon Command. These are standalone packs that you can get that basically come with all of the minis you need in order to play the game. They, however, can be combined in order to make larger maps and play multiplayer games. Obviously, it starts with playing at least 2, but you can move up and play even more the more packs you have and the more minis you have. They are pre-constructed, so you can use them right out of the box. But real quick, why don't we just take a look at how the game plays, and then we'll come back here and we'll get my final opinions on it. So here you can see a setup for Dungeon Command made using 2 different packs. Now this is the Heart of Cormyr and the Sting of Lolth, or however you say them. But these are 2 starter packs that are going to come with tiles to play the game. They're going to come with minis and cards. It comes basically with everything you need in order to pre-set up to play against another player. And you can even play a 2-player game with the starting packs. But this is using 2 different packs to make this dungeon, and we have a 2-player game. Now, on one side here, we're going to have kind of a heroes side. You're going to have adventurers, you have dwarves and elves and all kinds of different adventurers, halflings. And the other side, we're going to have the driders. But basically, each player is going to start with a certain number of cards, and these are going to be dictated by their hero. So we'll see here, we have the hero here, Renesra, the whatever that is. Doesn't matter, but she has traits here. She has a morale of 12, which is going to be basically how much you can take in terms of losing your guys before you lose the game. And she has a leadership of 7. And that leadership will determine how many guys, in terms of levels, she can have out on the board. She also has a hand size, which is creature hand of 3 and a starting order hand of 6. So she can have up to 3 creatures in her hand, and she can start with 6 starting orders. And she has an ability here that says once during her turn, she can discard a card from her orders in order to draw a new one. So each player is going to have a hero that will have some traits like that, and we'll tell them exactly how to start the game. So she starts with 3 creature cards, and she can have up to 7 levels of heroes out on the board. So we'll look at her heroes, and it just so happens that she has a halfling sneak, which is level 1. She has a human ranger, which is level 2, that's 3, and she has a half-orc thug, so that adds up to 6. Now, she can only start with the cards from her hand, so she'll play all 3 of these to the table, and she can put all 3 of these heroes out on the board in her starting area. So, she's now set up to start the game. Our other player has a leadership of 7 as well, and a morale of 13. So starts off a little bit higher morale, a little bit more likely to win the game apparently, well, but maybe not. Maybe the cards aren't as good. And she can place up to 7 points worth of guys out on the board. Well, she's going to play a Drow Blade Master, which is level 3, and she's going to play her Drider, which is level 4. That adds up to 7, so she'll play these 2 out and place her guys out in her starting area on the board here. So now, each player is set up to begin the game. And they would draw back up to their creature hand size. The Drow player to a creature hand size of 4, and the other player to a creature hand size of 3. Now that we've began, we're going to go ahead and start the game. Now, you can see here we have this, and these tiles are set up in grids. There's square grids out here. It's hard to see, I know, but there are small squares that fit the base of one of these guys here. So this guy's taking up 4 squares. And each creature is going to have a movement. So we can look at a creature here. You can see here that this halfling sneak has several traits. It's level 1, it has 20 hit points, it attacks for 10 in melee, you can see that right here, and then at the bottom you can see it has a speed number, which is 6 in this case, meaning he can move 6 squares. He also has an ability that says flanking, and he does 10 damage more when he's adjacent to at least 1 ally. So he gets flanking basically, and he's going to be able to do more damage. So when you move, which is going to be one of the first things you do on your turn. The first thing you'll actually do is refresh any of your characters, but at the beginning that's not going to happen. The second thing is you'll draw an order card and add it to your hand. So you'll get 1 more order card. This is kind of like magic in how it works. After you've done that part of your turn, you're going to be able to activate all of your heroes. And when you activate heroes, they can do several things. First off, they can move. So moving does not take their action. You can move them without using them, essentially. They move, but they are considered activated. So if we activate our halfling sneak, he can move up to 6 spaces. Now there are some terrains, they'll be hard to see here, that are called difficult, and that's going to slow them down. If you move through difficult terrain, it takes an extra point of movement, but he's going to move around it, and he'll move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. In addition to moving, you can make an attack, but there's nobody around for him to attack. He only has melee, which means he'd have to be next to someone to attack them. But he could potentially use cards from your hand in order to do things. Now, there are several different types of cards. We have things like Seize the Opportunity, which is an immediate card, kind of like an instant in Magic. This one, when you're attacked, you can play to prevent some damage to you and then deal damage back. You would play this as an instant, but it requires you to be at least level 2 and have the strength characteristic. Well, if we look at our halfling, Sneak, he's only level 1, and although he doesn't have strength either, he can't play that card. But if it were, for example, our human ranger, she's level 2 and has strength. If she were attacked, she could use that card in order to prevent some of the damage and deal some back. You have cards like standard cards, which can only be played on your turn and do exhaust your character. This one here is called Disrupting Attack, and it says you can make a melee attack that does plus 10 damage, and if it damages anybody from this, then they have to discard an order card from their hand. So this one will deal a little bit extra damage, but and if it hits, forces your opponent to discard some cards. So now you've seen standard cards, which will often increase your attack or give you some type of special attack, and immediate cards, which are often interrupt things that will make it a little harder for your opponent to deal damage to you. You also have minor cards, and this one is a minor card with the keyword any, which means anybody can play this card regardless of their characteristics or level. It says here, this creature moves its speed. So minor actions do not exhaust your character, and you can use them on your turn in order to do special things. So, for example, our halfling is already moved, but you could play that card in order to move him up to his speed again. So that's another type of action you can take using your guys. So you can take one standard action, which can be attacking or playing one of those cards from your hand that says standard on it. You can move, and then basically you're done with your turn. Now there are some other minor actions, for example, Quick Shot here, which if you had a ranged character would let you make 2 attacks essentially. One is a minor action, and one is your standard action. So each character is going to get to activate and do their movement. So this one would move, and she has a movement of 7. And the last guy would move, and he'd move somewhere. So maybe this person moves to this treasure chest, and these are going to be features out on the board. The treasure chests are going to be things that will allow you to improve your morale. And when you land on them, you'll flip it over, and it tells you how many treasures are there. This one has 1. And what we would do is take one of these little tokens out and put it here, and she would be on top of it. On her turn, she could use her standard action to pick this up. And what would happen if she picks this up is her morale would go up by 1. Now, the objective here is to do damage to your opponent. So eventually these creatures are going to move up, and they're going to get into positions where perhaps they can attack one of the other player's pieces. This is how you're going to do damage. I noted that each of the characters has an attack value on it. They also have hit points. So for example, this Blade Master here has a melee attack of 20, and let's say it's his turn. He could attack our halfling here, and the halfling has a hit point value of 20. So if he doesn't have any cards in his hand that he can play as an interrupt, the Drow Blade Master is going to deal 20 damage to the halfling. You would mark this with these little tokens they give you in order to mark how much damage you take. But essentially, he would take 20 damage and he would die. And this card, the Halfling Sneak, and the model would no longer belong to our other player here. They'd get removed from the game. And in addition to this, our player is going to lose morale. Now, that was a level 1 creature, a level 1 Halfling Sneak. So for having this die, they're going to lose 1 morale. And if you ever go down to 0 morale, you lose the game. So that's how melee attacks work. Now, at any point, you can actually refuse to take some of the damage, up to, well, any damage you want. And for each 10 damage you refuse to take, you can just drop in morale. This is a way to save your characters out on the board if you have special plans for them, but to take a hit in the game overall by losing morale. Now, ranged attacks work slightly differently. The Orc, for example, the half-orc thug here, has a ranged attack that does 20 damage at a range of 5. It says range of 5 next to it, or it just has a 5 in parentheses. That means the range is 5. So if he's standing here, you could look and see if you can trace a line directly to this guy less than 5 squares away, and he is. So he would deal 20 damage via a ranged attack. Now, this guy has no cover. I can draw a line from one corner of my square to all 4 corners of his. But let's say, for example, he was standing here. I cannot draw a direct line to all of the corners of his square, so he has cover. And this means that he can use his standard action on an off turn to tap and essentially dodge all of the damage, but he no longer has an action on his off turn. You always get an action both on your turn with your guys and on your opponent's turn to try and defend somehow by playing an action that will do something for you. So he can dodge all of this damage because he has some cover, but he'll be more open to other attacks on the same turn. Essentially, you're going to take actions with all of your different characters, trying to deal damage to your opponent and remove them from the board by most tactically moving yourself around. And after you've taken all of your actions, you're going to be able to play more guys to the board, up to your total leadership. Now, at this point, your leadership actually increases by 1 point. So you would move your leadership up, and it's going to go up throughout the game. So instead of 7, you now have 8. And let's say it's this player's turn, they've lost their halfling, and they have 5 points out on the board. At this point, they could look at their hand and they could play something that's up to 3. So maybe they want to play their Dwarven Defender. It is a 2 level, so that's still under their 8, and they would go over and they'd find their models, and they would take their Dwarven Defender and put it out anywhere in their start area. And on their next turn, that Dwarven Defender will have the option of moving and taking actions just like any other character. As I said, you're going to play in this manner until one player goes down below 0 morale by having their characters destroyed from the board up to however many levels they have equal in morale. And once a player has gone below 0, the other player will be the winner. Well, there you have it. That is Dungeon Command. The game feels an awful lot like Magic the Gathering to me, and that's probably not surprising because it is a Wizards of the Coast product. It kind of takes the idea of Magic the Gathering with the spells you can play on your turn, like sorceries. You have the actions you can take on your turn. You even tap your guys to use them. And then you have the instance and interrupt type things that you can play on your opponent's turns. So it kind of takes the Magic the Gathering feel and adds that tactical minis addition to it. For my own feel, I'm not personally a dungeon crawl type of person. Now, I know this is a tactical minis game, not a dungeon crawl, but it has that dungeon crawl theme, and so I'm kind of expecting in that element of randomness to it when it comes down to it, and it doesn't have any of that. When you're directly attacking one character from the other side, you do your damage to them, and the only thing that really affects that is cards in hand, not any randomness. So I feel like there should be dice rolling. I know that's not part of the game, and it's not really my judgment call to make, but for my feeling, I feel like it'd be a little bit better served by having dice rolling involved in it, even though I typically don't like that luck element in games. It just seems to fit in a dungeon crawl, dungeon fighting style of game. Overall, the game is decent. It's not really, again, my thing, but I think there's a lot there for people that do enjoy tactical minis type things, the tactics of moving around and best placing your units on the board, best utilizing their abilities, be it protective or ranged or cover, in order to deal damage to your opponents. So if you're looking for an experience, a good tactical minis experience that comes in a preset box, or you can take these boxes and build your own armies, definitely check out Dungeon Command. It just isn't a title that's really for me.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.